Hi, I'm Beatrice, and yeah, the title is as dramatic as it sounds. I'll be going through how my mom killed my dad and how I found out. It was one of the most shocking things I'd discovered in my life, and I still can't believe that my own mother would do something like this. My mom's name is Lydia, and she had gotten married to my dad, Felipe, when they were in their mid-20s. I remember that dad owned a pretty successful company, and that mom was a stay-at-home parent, so I didn't get to see my dad too often. Dad's company made him a lot of money, and so both my younger brother Reed and I got a lot of gifts during our birthdays and the holidays. I thought our family was so happy, and we were. Or at least Reed and I were, but since we were pretty young and didn't understand adults, I guess Lydia and Felipe had issues of their own. When I was in high school, Mom and Dad divorced, and my mom somehow managed to get full custody of my brother and I, while Dad was forced to pay a lot of child support. I was quite saddened, since now that meant that I would see my dad less. And what's worse, Lydia moved us to a tiny apartment, and we stopped getting the expensive gifts that we were used to. As I got older, I found it very interesting that my dad would text me every Christmas, asking me if I'd received a gift in the mail yet. I told him I hadn't, which I always found very suspicious. Felipe began to suspect that my mom was taking our gifts from the mailbox and probably selling them for money. This made sense, since every time I was missing a gift, Lydia would come back with one for herself. Dad even admitted that they had divorced over my dad putting a budget on my mom due to her spending addictions.
Lydia, what's this? Why did you spend $4,000 last week?
What's the problem? I know damn well that you can afford everything I buy. Don't be so harsh and such a cheapskate.
Then something terrible happened. My father had a stroke and was in rough shape. At the time, I was very worried about him when a miraculous thing happened. Mom remarried Dad out of the blue. The situation demanded a caretaker, and surprisingly, Lydia stepped up. Despite their past separation, everyone who knew Lydia considered her a hero for returning and willingly taking on the responsibility of caring for Dad in his time of need. But again, not every tale ends happily. Dad must have been in worse shape than we had previously thought, and he passed away unexpectedly mere weeks after his remarriage to Mom. The tragedy deeply affected Mom, leading her to isolate herself for weeks, unwilling to even talk to or look at us. Reed and I were also filled with sorrow. The memory of Dad's absence haunted us each week. The reality of him being gone weighed heavily on our hearts, a constant reminder that not everything ends as you want it. Our aunt was actually the one who prepared the funeral, since my family was too upset to do anything about it. Right after the funeral happened, Lydia came home with a bag full of money. I immediately asked her where she'd gotten it, and she explained that Dad passed the company on to her. I was really suspicious and didn't believe it, but I knew that I had to find the truth on my own.
Honey, do you want to see your father's will? It doesn't give much to you and your brother. He left you $50, but I'm sure Philippe had his reasons.
Sure, Mom. What? How come I only get $50?
Like I said, Dad probably had his reasons. He still loves you.
So, it's been a few weeks, and I'm beginning to wonder if the will that our mother showed us was genuine or not. It was, of course, possible that our father thought that we wouldn't need anything as my brother and I are fairly self-sufficient, but it just feels odd that he would only leave us with so little. Considering my dad's intelligence, I knew that there was no way that he would just throw all of his money to Mom after he passed. If she was shamelessly spending money while he was still alive, who knows what she's doing now that Dad's gone. Then, one day, I was just chilling on the couch when I caught the unmistakable sound of my mom digging into her closet. Curiosity hit me, and I snuck into her room the second she had left the house. I began snooping around in her suitcases and drawers. Crazily enough, I stumbled upon a handbag loaded with stacks of cash. This had to be at least $600,000. I couldn't believe that she would just leave that much cash lying around. My heart began to sink and my nerves became rattled when I uncovered a sealed folder with some paperwork inside. I was unsure if I should open it or not. If I decided to open the envelope because I was curious, I might actually get into some serious trouble with Lydia. Holding in a breath, I tore open the file. It was mostly empty, but a few papers fell out. I grabbed a wrinkled-looking paper and began to read. As my eyes scanned along the text and went from row to row, they watered up more and more. This was Dad's real will. In it, He stated that he was very clearly going to pass his company on to Reed, my brother. He also said that I would be getting partial ownership of the company as well, although the main thing I was getting from him was the house. The real will gave my mom only most of Dad's expensive furniture and about $5,000. It was a lot less than an entire company and a house, but I could now see why Lydia wanted to hide this and act as if it didn't exist. I quickly snapped a few photos of the original will, just in case anything happened to it. I then grabbed the other paper and looked at it. It was the will that Lydia had shown me. Yup, it stated that she'd get everything that Felipe owned and only give Reed and me very little cash.
What are you doing?
I was startled by my brother coming in. Apparently, I had begun to sob and I didn't even notice. I showed Reed the will, and as he read on, his hands balled into fists. The idea that Lydia had swindled my brother and I out of our true inheritance was enraging. Reed quickly grabbed the whole file and brought it to his room. I followed him. What should we do?
I don't know. We could confront her, but Mom has a lot of power. She could claim that we're lying about all of this.
Yeah.
But this is way too much of a coincidence. Mom comes back to Dad and he dies only 3 weeks later? It's too close for this to seem accidental.
There's no way you're accusing Mom of murder.
Think about it, Beatrice. Dad was in poor health, but his company was at its peak. Imagine all the money that the company is still making. Besides, the doctors said that all Dad needed was caring and he'd recover fully.
You're right. But wouldn't the doctors know how he died? If Mom killed him, surely they would know.
Yeah, unless...
Unless what? I was a little confused about my brother. Clearly, Reed had watched a few too many crime shows. But I listened to him, and he began to theorize that maybe Lydia had asked the doctors to hide his real cause of death or something. His theory could completely be valid, so I contacted my aunt and asked her to come over with her copy of Dad's will. When I opened it, I immediately noticed that it was the one that Dad actually wrote. Reed got mad and started to accuse our aunt of also hiding the secret, but she claimed that she never opened it since she read the one that Mom had. I mentally face-palmed. You're telling me that all of this could have been fixed in the first place if my aunt had just decided to read her own paper? Anyway, my aunt realized that Lydia had lied about everything to get the money. We then went to visit the lawyer that had written our father's will. From here on, my aunt kinda took over. She asked the lawyer what could be done about how things had gone down, and the lawyer started the proceedings that would set things right. My aunt made sure to get everything straight and got the company back from under my mom's name. Reed and I went to the hospital where Dad was pronounced dead, and we pretended to bribe the doctors to ask them for how Felipe actually died. After a few minutes, they cracked.
It was an overdose. Lydia said he'd killed himself. Dad would never do that. And the files say he died from a heart attack. Why would you lie if he had actually committed suicide? Lydia admitted that she accidentally gave him too much medication, and that he began to,
Don't lie now. If you tell us the truth, we have $80,000 that we're sure you'd like to have.
I don't know. She said that she would give me any amount of money I wanted if I just lie for her. She said she could only come up with the money if I lied.
This was pissing me off. I grabbed Reed and we quickly left, ignoring the doctor when he demanded that we give him the money. We had actually recorded the conversation in secret, so there was no need to actually give him what we promised. The two of us went to the police station right after. I wasn't sure what to do, though. We had to tell the officers our suspicions of Mom killing Dad, and it wasn't like we could get a clear confession from her. However, we had them open an investigation into our father's death. Reed and I then decided to just confront Lydia and show her all of the evidence we had. I was honestly nervous, but if our theories were right, then we might just get her to confess. An hour later, the police took my mom into the station, and we were given an opportunity to speak with her along with them. My brows furrowed, seeing her wearing a luxurious fur coat. That was Dad's money. The officers looked over the evidence and questioned my mom. They also took the doctors in to prod them about their role in covering up our father's true cause of death. It's not clear to me, but the chief of police escorted my brother and me to the observation room, where Lydia was in tears. She was admitting fully to handing Dad too many pills. She also cried as she explained that she had actually forced him to write and sign the fake will. The officer put her into cuffs and hauled her to one of the jail cells. I was disappointed, my face burning up in both sadness and anger. I couldn't believe that she'd do something like this, but at least we'd caught her. As Reed and I passed her cell, Reed gave her the finger and I barely even looked at her. Lydia didn't deserve any attention. She was a monster in my eyes now. So in court, my mom was sentenced to 15 years in jail. It's not enough, and of course, this sparked an outrage in our community since everyone found out the truth. I was upset about the short amount of prison time. But that's a good amount of time for Reed and I to fix the company back up and actually use the money for good. Unlike Lydia, who only used the money to feed her spending habits. I think I only visited Mom once so far during her prison sentence. It was to deliver a small cake for her 50th birthday. It wasn't since I was feeling nice, but I wanted to send another message. The cake had a middle finger right in the center with a note saying that she shouldn't have been greedy. I also wrote that she was cut off from the family and that nobody was to be helping her when she got out of prison. I later got a phone call from her with some mean words, but I'm still not satisfied. I still have a few more ideas of what to bring her, and I'm sure it will make her feel upset and hopefully regret ruining everyone's life. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment.